I think it's time to harvest these Beauregard Sweet Potatoes. In this container I planted 4 slips, and I've done just a little bit of poking around, and I can tell that all of them have potatoes. That one's got a pretty good one right up on top. I think I'll just dig around these a little bit before we get the container out. Let's just see what we got right on top. Okay, I did a little digging around, and I've found at least 5 potatoes right on top. So I'm sure there are probably some below there, so I think we're going to do pretty good on this container. Let's get it out in the yard and we'll see what we got. What I'm going to do is trim these vines away from the edge of the container first, and we'll put it on a tarp and dump it out. Check it out. I intended to get this done yesterday, but I didn't quite get around to it. Some stuff came up. So it rained last night, and that's why it looks a little bit darker. I'm going to go ahead and cut around this container, and then I'll carry it over to a tarp and we'll take a look at what we have here. Now that we got rid of the vines, you can see where some of these are attached. Now I'm going to dump these out and we'll see what we got. I'm hoping for more below those, but we won't know until we dump this out. So let's just get it dumped out and see what we got. Looks like most of them are on top. Looks like there were some smaller ones starting to form, so we probably wouldn't have been a bad idea to leave it for a couple more weeks. But I had a good day for this and I wanted to get it done. Looks like we have some ants in here too. Let me get all these potatoes separated. And what I'll do with these real small ones is I'll save these for next year. I got a lot of small ones on that. And see, I should have probably waited a couple more weeks. They were looking, I was seeing potatoes like this one, real nice ones, but there were a lot of smaller ones underneath. Let me see if I can find some more in here. Oh, there's a couple there. Over here. Yeah, it looks like that's about what we ended up with. These Beauregards look like real good sweet potatoes. And what I'll do now is I'm going to put these out in our shed, and I'll let these cure for a couple of weeks before I eat them. Of course, I'll trim all the vines off first, and the curing will allow them to get sweeter, and it'll also heal any scrapes you create when you're harvesting and where you break it off from the vine. It'll heal that over. But for a first try with these Beauregards, I'd say it's all right. Could have been much better, I think. I planted these much later than I did my other ones. I happened to see some slips for sale, which I've never seen before locally. And I didn't get these into the container until I think it was early June. And then I didn't water them at all, except for when it rains, except for about maybe a half a dozen times during the entire summer. So these were kind of over there just doing their own thing, except when it got extremely dry. But I've got a bunch of small ones. I'm just going to save those for next year, and we'll eat the larger ones. I thought we'd get down here a little closer so we can see the actual size of the potatoes a little bit better. That's the biggest one. Got a couple of them big enough to eat, but most of them are really pretty small. So I'll know better on the next ones to start a lot earlier and maybe wait a little bit longer. What I usually do is I leave them out in the sun to dry off just a little bit where I harvest them on the tarp. A few hours is probably good enough, and then I wipe off any loose dirt with a dry rag. Then I put them on this shelf in here in the shed, and then I close the door and they stay in here for a couple of weeks. Ideally, you would want the temperature to be around 85 or so, with the humidity around 85 or so also. And under ideal conditions they can cure in as quick as a week. But since my conditions for curing aren't ideal, I let them go a bit longer, and I go a couple weeks. And then after they're in here for a couple of weeks, they're ready for eating or storing. And when I get ready to eat one, I'll just clean it off real good then and cook it. And for storing, it's a little bit warm indoors for storing, but I have a room that is cooler than the rest of the house, so I keep them in a dark place in a cool area, probably upper 60s, and they seem to do fine in those conditions. And these smaller ones will be perfect if I can keep those all winter. Those will be perfect for starting new plants. I'll just get myself a plastic bin, put some soil in it, put these in the soil, and those will root very easily usually. That's the way I did this spring. I used some small tubers from last year. That's how I got my sweet potatoes around the perimeter of the garden. If you're just now finding this channel and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Otherwise, like, comment, and share. We'll see you next time.